Now that you're somewhat familiar with the WordPress interface, we're going to jump down to the bottom of the menu here and edit some settings. Let's start with our general settings, which are the most basic controls over your WordPress site. So as you can see here, you can edit your site title and tagline at any time. Below that, you'll notice you can change your WordPress address as well as your site address. Now first, let me warn you that you almost never want to edit your WordPress address on this screen because it will break your site and lock you out unless you move your WordPress files to the new address immediately after changing that. Your site address is a little different. You would use that if you wanted your site homepage to be different from your WordPress homepage. So for instance, if your main site is example.net and you have WordPress installed at example.net/blog, you would enter example.net here, so when people click on your homepage link or your logo, they go back to the main site. That's kind of a rare use case, but it's nice to have if you need it. Most of the time, though, you'll want to leave both of those fields alone. The email address here is where all of your administrative notifications go. So when WordPress updates automatically or when a new user is added, you'll be notified at this address. Speaking of users, you can specify here whether you want people to be able to register and join your site without you adding them yourself. And then you can choose the default role here. Subscriber is usually the smartest option because they have no editing privileges. Next, you can edit your time zone. Just choose a nearby city or the appropriate UTC offset. And then you can edit your date and time format. This determines how your site displays the date and time on your posts and comments and things like that. And then you can choose the day you want your week to start with. That's just an organizational thing based on your preference. And finally, you can change your site language. So now that we're finished with this page, we're going to go back over to the menu and take a look at the writing settings. The first thing you see here is the default post category. Whatever you select here will be assigned to any post that you don't assign at least one other category to. This will default to uncategorized, which I think makes a lot of sense for posts that haven't been categorized. But once you've added some categories, you can change that to whatever you like. Default post format. Standard is the best option for most people here, and you can always change that on an individual basis from the post editing screen. I know I'm glazing over this a little bit, but we will discuss post formats later in the course. Post via email. This is something that isn't used very often, but if you'd like to set up an email address you can email content to and have it automatically published to your site, you can set that up here. And then we have update services. There's a service here called Ping-O-Matic that's automatically included, and anytime you publish a post, WordPress will notify that service, and it will notify all the major search engines so your site is discoverable. If you don't want that to happen, you can just delete that URL and leave that box empty. Moving right along, let's dive into our reading settings. The first option here determines what shows up on your front page. It's either your latest posts in a traditional blog format or a static page. So if you go with a static page, you can select which page you want for your front page, and then optionally you can select a posts page that will display your latest posts. For example, you could create a page called Home for your home page and set that as your front page here, and then you could create a page called Blog and set that as your posts page. For the time being, I'm just going to stick with the default setting, your latest posts. Next, you can choose how many posts appear on your blog pages, and that also includes places like your category archives and search results. Anywhere WordPress lists your posts, it's going to be limited to this number per page. The next option is the same general idea, but it applies to your RSS feed. Now, RSS isn't as popular as it used to be, but it's basically a way for people to read your posts in a feed reader like Dig Reader, for example. 10 is usually sufficient for that. Along the same lines, you can choose whether people who read your content with RSS get the entire post or just a summary. If you choose summary, they'll only get the first paragraph or so, and they'll have to click through to your site to read the rest. Search engine visibility. If you check this box, search engines like Google will not index your site. Most people will want to leave this unchecked for obvious reasons. Next, we have discussion settings. These settings govern the comment system on your site. So first, we have the default article settings. This is what happens by default, but you can always override these options on an individual post. Attempt to notify any blogs linked to from the article, and allow link notifications from other blogs on new articles. That is completely up to you. Basically, this just appears as a comment on a site, letting them know that another site has linked to them. Allow people to post comments on new articles. This is the default setting for all new posts, but again, you can always override that and enable or disable comments on an individual post. Comment author must fill out name and email. If you uncheck that, it'll allow people to comment anonymously. Users must be registered and logged in to comment. Pretty self-explanatory, just adds another level of security to your site. Automatically close comments on articles older than 14 days, or whatever number you specify. If you enable that, comments will be open until the post is 14 days old, and then they will be closed automatically. Threaded or nested comments are basically where you have a reply to a reply to a reply to a reply, and you can choose how many levels of replies can happen. The next option allows you to break comments into pages if you want, and you can specify how many top-level comments you want displayed per page. Next, you can choose what order to display your comments in, whether you want the oldest or the newest comments to be on top. You can set up email notifications to notify you whenever there's a new comment or when a comment is held for moderation, or you can uncheck both of those to get no notifications at all. Next, you can choose how moderation works. If you check this first box, every comment must be approved before it shows up. If you check the second box, everybody has to have their first comment approved, but they can comment freely after that. And if you uncheck both of those boxes, all comments will automatically post with no approval process on your end. Hold a comment in the queue if it contains 2 or more links. This will help protect your site from spam, and I recommend you keep that at a maximum of 2. These 2 boxes are here for words, phrases, URLs, email addresses, and IP addresses that you'd like to flag automatically if they appear in a comment. So anything you add to this first box will hold a comment in your moderation queue, so you'll have to approve it before it goes live. The second box is for stuff where there's no chance of a false positive, because when anything in this box appears in a comment, the comment goes straight to the trash without even notifying you. At the bottom of this page, we have avatar settings. Pretty simple. Choose whether to show avatars, choose the maximum rating that's appropriate for your site, and choose a default avatar for people who may not have one. Media settings are super simple. When you're inserting an image into a post or a page, you have a few sizing options for how the image will be scaled and displayed. You can do full size, you can choose the exact dimensions, or you can go with one of these preset sizes, large, medium, and thumbnail. So you can set these dimensions to whatever works best for you, and you may want to return to this page in the future once you've kind of figured that out. Our final settings page is permalinks. This determines what the link structure for your site looks like. By default, it uses this plain option, example.net/?p=123, which is not very search engine friendly and not very human friendly either, because when I look at that, I have no idea what it is. So whenever I launch a new site, one of the first things I do is change the permalink structure to something that makes sense. My 2 favorites are post name, which is as simple and readable as it gets, and day and name, which includes the date of publication in the URL. As long as you've got the post name in your permalinks, the rest is totally up to you. And finally, you can also change the link structure for your category and tag URLs. So if I have a category called business, the page for that category would be example.net/category/business. If I wanted to, I could use this to replace the word category with something like topics, so then my URL would be example.net/topics/business. And the same thing applies for tags.